Hi, I'm Shawn.
Hi, I'm Emily.
And welcome to Impromptu, the podcast where we talk about music and whatever else we feel like. All right, welcome to episode 3, everyone. We made it.
We made it.
Yes.
Against all odds.
Against all of the odds. It's been a while since we recorded our last episode, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I ended up getting COVID, and it knocked me out for about a week and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got exposed to COVID twice. So it was stressful times for both of us, I think.
I think
July.
so, too.
Man.
July, we just don't think about her.
Nope. July was good for like the first 2 weeks, and then everything went nosedive.
I agree. You know what it was? I don't know. I don't know exactly how I got COVID.
Right.
But if I had to make an educated guess, it was when I went to the DMV to get my North Dakota license.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Well, the DMV is scary enough, but
It's scary enough. And I don't see anybody social distancing in North Dakota in general.
I
can't picture that.
Yeah. But I did my best to stay away from people, but I did my best. It wasn't much.
Okay. According to my therapist, your best can look different depending on the day.
But you know what? That's so true.
And it's enough.
That's so true. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just COVID that put a pause on our podcasting, but we actually were both at a conference last week called ACDA Summer Dialogue. And for those of you not in the know, ACDA stands for the American Choral Directors Association. And every summer, our Minnesota chapter puts on a summer conference that we lovingly call Summer Dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a reunion and chance to meet new people and learn a lot of new stuff, professional development. It's a chance to be singing a lot, both being in rehearsals, but also learning how to lead rehearsals. I think that was my favorite part of being in the director's chorus, the thing which we might mention later on. But you just get to observe how different people teach.
Right.
And I kind of squirrel away my pick from what they do, what I like, and what I think can work in my own ensembles and stuff.
Right. So cool. Summer Dialogue is it's a couple day long event. This year it was a 3-day long event. Sometimes it was 4 in the past, and so and each day is filled with reading sessions where we look at new music and sing through it as a room full of choir directors. There's topic sessions that deal with topics from
no way
working with transgender voices, cultural appropriation. And tons of other things too. And so it's not just a fun get together, even though it is, but it's a very educational resource as well for choir directors. All right, so segueing into our next little topic here about Summer Dialogue, Emily and I, we don't just, go as regular attendees. We actually have special roles that we play throughout the week. Do you want to talk about your role first?
Yeah. So what I do at Summer Dialogue for, I think it might be 5 years now. Or no, it's 4. I have been a piano accompanist, a collaborative pianist for all of these reading sessions. Well, not all of them. My duties are split with another guy named Aaron, who's wonderful. And
Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. He's just a hoot and a beast at the piano. And yeah, so what I do is first I get assigned to what reading sessions I'm going to play. Usually I've played for Student Conductors Workshop, which is a chance for college students to come and basically practice their conducting skills, rehearse a piece with a guest clinician to kind of, I don't want to say whip them into shape, but, help them as they go along their conducting journey, I guess. Yep. And so I do a few pieces for them. And then there's usually like 4 or 5 other reading sessions that I play for. And so once I find out who I'm playing for, I get a list of all of the conductors who are leading those sessions, and I get in touch with them as soon as I can to ask them, okay, out of the 12 pieces that it says that you're going to be conducting, do you need me to play every single one of them? Or are you going to make any cuts to the music, like stop at page 4, measure 20? I don't know. Or are you going to play recordings instead of conducting through it? And that's a very important part of the prep work, because I don't want to waste my time practicing stuff really, really hard that I end up not even having to play. Mm-hmm. And that just music that takes up room in my suitcase.
Yes,
and
that's true.
I'm someone who, I told you the other day, Shawn, I'm a slow cooker, not an Instapot. So I like to have as much time as possible to let the music sink in. I also have some issues with tendonitis and joint stuff like that. So I literally can't cram. Otherwise, it's physically painful.
Yeah.
So, yep. That's what I do.
And I think for as long as you've been one of the collaborative pianists, I have been serving as the technology coordinator for Dialogue. Yes. I don't know if there's a more official term than that, but basically what I do is I do my best to make sure that all of the technology throughout the week works properly. So that's working with the sound at whatever location we're at. So this past week we were at St. John's University, and we were there last year too. So I was kind of familiar with the equipment I'd be working with again. So, it's their speaker systems in their auditorium, their microphones, and working with... You don't have to do
lights, right?
They showed me how to, the stage lights, like, if they're up there giving a presentation. Yeah. So that was also me.
NBD. It's all me.
No big deal. Yep.
I'm
hair
the puppet
flip.
master.
Insert hair flip here. But yeah, it's also working with the presenters, if they're bringing like a PowerPoint or other digital media, how to get that hooked up to the computer system or the projector or any of that. And so, yeah, it's my job to make sure all of that goes smoothly. And so, yeah, I think it's been 4 or 5 years that I've been serving in that capacity. Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that we both have in common with these roles is you have a little bit of familiarity with the St. John's sound system, whatever.
Yep.
But when it comes down to it, we don't really know what we're going to get until we show up and meet the presenter. And in my case, I knew going into it that the piano I was going to play it's functional, but it's not an amazing instrument by any means. So, and that can, especially with the piano, that I had zero ability to do different dynamics, really. So that changes how I present the piece, changes how much pressure I apply to the piano.
And in a room that has carpet, You kind of have to throw dynamics out the window.
Exactly. Yeah, I had several people come up to me and say, "Could you just play louder?" And I was like, "Okay." And for me, it's a weird setup at St. John's. I love being there, but it's a weird setup in that auditorium where this little upright piano is smack dab center below the stage. Is that a good way to describe it? It's kind of like if you're standing on stage,
like the top of the piano is, I don't think it was level with the stage. I think it was maybe like a foot or two below where the stage fell off.
The other thing that the piano setup sort of reminds me of is if you think of, maybe you see on TV when they have like the old-fashioned black and white silent films, and there would be a organist or a pianist accompanying it right in front, or the Wurlitzer organ, just right center in the middle of everything. So that's kind of how it felt. But having to crane my neck to look up at the conductor was a little tricky. So I talked a little bit about how I prepare for that, but then some other things that I do in the moment while I'm playing is I give myself permission not to play all of the notes. Because what everybody is singing, well, all of the singers are sight reading, basically. So I'm not sight reading, but I need to be able to keep the tempo going, keep it steady. I need to help out every once in a while if the voice parts are kind of flailing around. If people aren't getting their notes, I'll double that.
Yep.
Sometimes I have to scrap whatever flashy left-hand accompaniment is happening and just turn it into block chords for the sake of keeping everybody together.
Right.
In the same tempo and rhythm. Or to grab a page turn.
Yeah, and as somebody sitting in the room who's singing the music, we appreciate that.
Yes. And I'll be honest, speaking of page turns, there was a page turn that I really messed up in one session because my music wasn't hole punched in a binder. It was just the plain untouched vocal score thing. And I went to turn the page and the whole thing of music fell off the music stand, and I had to struggle for like maybe 4 or 5 measures trying to play and keep the song going because we can't stop at all. The audience the singers don't know what's happening. The conductor is looking at their music. They don't see me struggling. So I was like really struggle bussing trying to get my non-dominant hand to get this music back up on the thing to the right page, flattened out again. So anyways, little chaotic things like that can happen.
Right.
But yeah, if I study well enough ahead of time, know what the harmonic structure is and the melodic content, then I'm a pretty good improviser. I can fake my way through stuff like that. So
yeah. And I would say that's a really good example of why having music on an iPad is great. I've used my iPad at outdoor weddings during windy days, and it makes it so much more easy to maneuver your music when all you have to do is tap a screen and not worry about the wind blowing your pages away. But anyway. Right. So yeah, you talked a little bit about the prep work. So some for your role. So some prep work for mine is about 2 or 3 weeks before dialogue starts. I get a list of the presenters and their email addresses, and I reach out to all of them just to kind of start getting a game plan made of who's going to need what for their session. So, how many microphones are you going to need? Are you bringing a PowerPoint? If so, are you bringing your own computer, or are you going to need my computer? Just start mapping things out. And most of the presenters were good at getting back to me.
Yes.
I'm sure you you had some.
Yep, there's always a couple where you're just like, okay, crickets, we'll see how this goes. And usually it ends up fine. But it just adds a little bit of nervousness to me.
And I would say the ones who are leading big presentations are great at getting back to me in terms of what they need for sound. This year, one of the presentations also had a panel of speakers, so I needed to make sure that St. John's had enough microphones ahead of time. So what I do is once I have my list of everyone's needs, then I forward that on to St. John's or whatever campus we're at, and they do their best to make sure that our needs are accommodated for. And then I try and get to the campus about a day early, just to familiarize myself with the space again and to meet with any of the campus's IT team, just to make sure I know what I'm doing. And so, yeah, I think the only campuses that I've done the technology stuff at has been St. Olaf and St. John's.
Yep, same for me with piano.
Both of which have very different systems for sound and in presentations, but for me, it's pretty easy to learn the two different systems. So yeah, so that's just a little bit about the roles we play at Summer Dialogue. So do we want to chat a little bit about some of the sessions or any of the music we heard or any of the afterglows?
Let's just call it quits. Yes, let's, please.
Well, let's start off by, do you have any pieces that maybe you played or maybe you heard throughout the week that resonated with you or stuck with you or you couldn't get out of your head?
Yeah. Well, one of them is one that I ended up playing last year as well. And it's by Susan LaBar.
Susan LaBar. Oh.
Yes. And it's a piece called Where the Light Begins.
It is so good, everyone.
So
if you have
good.
never heard it, go look it up.
Oh, and the text is absolutely gorgeous. It's by a text by a woman named Jan Richardson, who I believe is, I think she's a pastor, like a Methodist pastor. And she writes just this wonderful, very spiritual, inspired by her faith, poetry that's inspired by her faith, but it doesn't seem overtly Christian.
Right,
or
it's not
religious at all. It gets to more the heart of, I don't know, I want to say it's kind of mystical in a way. Mm-hmm. The mysteries of creation and humanity. And, just absolutely stunning. And it was one that the student conductor had been preparing. Mm-hmm. And she really nailed it. A lot of times I've played for these student conductors and I can see their hands shaking, and which is totally okay. Like, if you're not nervous up there, you're probably a psychopath or something, because it's nerve-wracking to be up there in front of for these 20-year-old college students, they're not quite conducting their peers yet. They're conducting their teachers in a lot of ways.
That is true.
And their mentors. So yeah, that's nerve-wracking. But she was so prepared. She knew exactly what she was doing in every bar. And so that made it really easy for me because I had a strong collaborator. Yeah, it was a beautiful piece. So that's one. And then another would be, this wasn't in a reading session, but it was the song that a woman named Melanie Damore, she was one of the guest conductors for the All-State Choir Camp that was going on at the same time. And she popped in to do a workshop, and she led us in this song called, it was something about a lighthouse. Do you remember what it was called?
Not off the top of my head.
Oh. Let the light shine from the lighthouse, shine on me. Something like that. Shine on you. And she didn't really teach it to us. She just kind of sang it once or twice and then motioned us all in to join in with her. And then she pointed at us and said, okay, now harmonize. And we did.
It was so
and
cool.
It was super cool. And it was one of those just kind of goosebump moments, because we were a room of mostly white people who were raised in this very Western read your sheet music tradition. And then Melanie is so much about, she's classically trained too, but she's so much, her work centers around the oral tradition, right? And so we were able to just, all our different voices and our different ideas and our harmonies intertwining together in this. It was just magical.
Yeah. Kind of circling back to the question of, pieces that were stuck in your head or that really resonated. I was also going to say Where the Light Begins. This was in the bar piece.
And maybe we could play a little bit of that later. I don't know.
Maybe if I feel like editing it into it.
Okay, it's okay.
We'll see.
We'll link it. We'll link it.
But one of the other pieces that I've loved since I heard it for the first time, which I think it was just premiered last year, was Kyle Peterson's Does the World Say?
Okay.
It was also played, I think, in the SSAA reading session. I think we listened to it. I don't think we sang. Well, I didn't sing. I listened.
Oh, yeah, right. It was one of those ones where I didn't have to play it. I received the music, but I didn't have to play it. Woohoo!
Kyle wrote it for the, or he was commissioned to write it for the SSAA All-State Choir. I want to say it was for last summer.
Was that the one where the text was with Brian Newhouse?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, I don't know.
Let me see what the thing says.
They both do a lot of stuff. So
it was last year because it was directed by Julie Oppenheim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, I love that one. If you haven't heard that one either, go look it up. And then, I don't know why, but one of the refrains from Jacob Narvarud's A Patch of Light.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good song.
Something like that.
But there's this motif that he uses in his, owing refrains that just would get stuck in my head. And as I would walk through campus, it would just appear in my head and I couldn't get it out. So if you haven't heard that one either, it's called A Patch of Light by Jacob Narvarud.
Yep.
And then during the student conductor workshop as well, one of the pieces that one of the students led was Melanie D'Amour's Lead with Love.
Lead with Love. So
and
good.
I'm so glad that we worked on that piece earlier in the week because the All-State SATB choir actually sang that during their portion of the concert on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And at one point, Melanie turned around and invited the audience to sing. And, for the directors in the room who know the piece, of course, we could hop right in. And if I was singing the tenor line, it was great. And I was sitting next to Dylan, who was singing bass. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure the people around us were like, how do you know this piece? But luckily we were able to have sung through it earlier in the week. So, boy, oh boy, that was one of the craziest concerts I think I've ever seen from the All-State choirs.
Yep, I watched the live stream and, it was so good.
I want to specify, crazy meant really, really good. Not like anything else other than this was a phenomenal concert. each of the choirs sang with integrity. They were sharing their story, and you could feel the singer's passion in the room.
Mm-hmm. And I sat in on some of the on one of the rehearsals for the SATB choir that Melanie was leading, and rehearsal ended with maybe 10 minutes of students popcorning, talking about how the week has been. And a lot of them said, like, I feel like we're a family. And, as corny as that might sound, like, I never went to all-state choir camp, so I didn't have those types of experiences. But I've had similar things where you get together with a bunch of people for a very short time, and so many amazing things happen, and you grow together. And I could definitely hear those connections, that bond, by how they were making the music. It was cool.
Yeah, I think all of the all-state choirs had that bond, that connection, that familial togetherness, and it was very evident in their sounds, and the way they all were just presenting themselves during their performances. So that was definitely a highlight of the week, was to see that concert. But I think one of the best highlights for our summer dialogues are the afterglows.
Yes.
And I say that because that's really where a lot of the, I don't want to say boundaries, but like,
you're just people hanging out with a glass of wine in your hand. You're not,
right.
You're my professor from...
There's no hierarchy,
Right.
There's, it's one of the more inclusive things in the dialogue, in the week of dialogue, is we're all just there hanging out. And that's kind of where the dialogue really happens, is at the afterglows, where we're kind of all unwinding and processing from the day and just chatting about life and connecting with friends. But one of the highlights for the afterglows, and I'm so glad they started this years ago, is beer choir. Beer choir.
So fun.
If you have never attended a beer choir event, if you see one in your area, go to it.
Get thee to beer choir.
It is life-changing in the greatest way.
I didn't even drink beer while I was there, and it was a stupid fun time. Like,
it was great.
It was wonderful.
The closest thing I can think I can relate this to is if you've ever been to like a beer and hymns event where people are drinking and singing hymns. It's the same thing, except the hymns are all about beer and drinking beer.
Right. Yeah. Or like, imagine the energy you have when you're at a stoplight and your favorite jam comes on and you just, go full ham on that.
Yeah.
And now you're doing that in a bar with like 50 other people. Yes.
So, there's some classics in there too, but my favorite are the pieces that were written specifically for beer choir, like the beer choir
the theme song.
If you haven't heard it, it's so good, especially when you're drinking beer.
Yes. The beer choir is the choir that sings while drinking beer.
All right. We don't want to get a copyright, but
okay. Whoop.
we'll save it. We'll save it for when we're at beer choir the next time.
Yeah.
But another fan favorite is the beer choir version of Doe, a deer, a female deer, from Sound of Music.
Yes.
But it's Doe, the stuff that buys me beer. Ray, the guy who serves my beer, etc. So there is the beer choir hymnal, and that's actually what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can look that up.
My boyfriend swiped one of those, and I should have brought that with me today so I could flip through it with you, but whoops.
Well, they have it available digitally too.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I've been to a couple beer choir events where instead of them printing out the booklets, they just give you a QR code. You scan it with your phone and it takes you right there.
Perfect.
Although I would recommend bringing a device slightly bigger than a phone, because if you're drinking and you're having a great time, it might be hard enough to
impaired.
read. music as is, but let alone on a small phone screen.
Yeah.
iPad's recommended. Yeah. So,
and I should say, personally, it was a lot of fun for me because, as I mentioned, my boyfriend came with me. He's not, as someone told me later, he's not one of us.
He's an outsider.
He's an Auslander. He was not raised doing choir. He took piano, but it never stuck, and kind of like me, he doesn't even really drink that much. So he was like, what is this going to be like? I don't know, but we'll find out. Okay. And he ended up having a great time because you also get to socialize with all these other people. And yeah. He still talks about you.
Aw. Hi, Evan. But yeah. So dialogue is just one of those, it just recharges your battery and gets you ready for the upcoming year. Whether you're teaching in a school or working with a community choir or a church choir, it's just nice to be with people who get what you do. Yes,
especially after these past 2 years. A lot of our discussions were like, why was 2021 so much harder? Right. Or why is 2022 so much harder than 2020?
Well, I remember last year, so of course the summer that COVID happened in 2020, we didn't have a dialogue. And we were trying to get some digital thing put together, but it wasn't going to be the same. And so that kind of fell through. But we were able to have an in-person dialogue in 2021. And I remember the first thing we did was we opened dialogue by singing.
Wasn't it The Awakening?
The Awakening. Is that by
Joseph Martin?
No. Yes, Joseph Martin. Yes.
Because I played it. I played it for that.
And I just remember looking around the room and we were all in tears because for a lot of people in that room, this was the first time that live music had been sung since the start of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And it was...
We were all wearing masks.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
It was so profound. And if you haven't heard The Awakening, the meaning of that piece meant even more in that setting, in that time. It's about music, coming alive and your soul being awoken by music. And so super powerful piece. And it was so fitting for that dialogue. But yeah, every year dialogue, you walk away with just feeling refreshed, recharged, and rejuvenated, ready to take on the upcoming year. And for me, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the experience and catching up with everybody. So
yeah. It's a wonderful time. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It
seriously is. It seriously is.
So. Yeah, I don't quite know how to describe it. And for me, I think of myself primarily as a pianist most of the time, who's had to learn the skills of conducting. So it always feels great to walk in there to dialogue and still be treated like, yeah, you're one of us. You're welcome here.
One of us.
We build this little fire on stage and we initiate the, Mm-hmm.
Well, we can't tell them all of the secrets, Emily.
Sure. Yes. No, you just have to come and experience it.
So yeah, if you are a Minnesota or even non-Minnesota choir director, I'm technically outstate now. So, but anyway, if you want an experience during the summer to come to a choral directors conference, but have it be casual and you want to learn a bunch, I highly recommend the Minnesota ACDA Summer Dialogue. Mm-hmm. So, I think we're rolling up just at about 35 minutes now. I think that's a good length for a podcast.
That's a good length.
So I think we'll come to our closing now. But thank you for tuning in and listening. Hopefully these come out a little bit more regularly.
Right.
With not getting COVID, but
yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, until next time, everybody. Farewell.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Tschüss.